Studying in popularizing. In the year of 2021, I started writing Confuciology study. My interest in learning was as familiar to me as if it lived with me for years. This was accounted for by my study, which at every step led me to a stronger understanding of the Kondo community. Not only has someone not truly seen Roblox if they do not know Kondos, someone will not know the Kondo community if they have not seen Roblox community. In any case, writing a book about the psychology of the Kondo community trains both my academic competencies and my analytical capabilities against Kondos. Even if I never pursued a psychological career, delving into the science as little more than a hobby, I retain the conviction that I should, in some day, achieve the goal that the anti-Kondo community will benefit from Confuciology study. And this alone enabled me to bear all the petty issues of being a member of the anti-Kondo community. In addition to this, there was the unwavering belief for what it means to be a strong person, notably from the ability to resist and repress human vices. And from the Kondo players, how often do you see this strength? In addition, both the conscious and subconscious attitudes regarding status reminded me of my peers from my earlier secondary education. I was disdainful of their reckless combination of corrupt power and self-centered perception. Since people are attached to any way to prove usually non-existent superiority, psychological patterns can be attributed not to or through a calculating mind, but an empathetic soul. What attracted me to Confuciology study, the study of Con members, aside from its enhancement of professional competencies, was their applicability into the field of the digital era. Conclusions developed through established behaviors in various social media platforms which would have been considered rare in the real world. Thus, the full extent of this contrast between online behaviors and those in real life had not been clear to even the most prestigious researchers. In those days, I was inclined to hypothesize that at my stage, leading an anti-Kondo group would be unreliable for the anti-Kondo community's progress, and the best move would be to pass on leadership of the ODH. To my horror, my associates, even among the ODH itself, made me see that this belief was false. I could not help seeing that even in the most dedicated members there is little knowledge concerning the mistakes and failures of previous anti-Kondo groups. Notably, the majority of group leaders were, like me before, caught in the lie that more allies can be regarded as a serious power who will rise to assist our group's objectives. Among the ODH, the main decisions were still passed through the staff. They were also of the opinion that power can be measured by the group members and alliances, and forgot that any group leader who pursued those had long ceased to be powerful, especially when the internal conditions of a small group were never far from inactivity. I learned this formation better than the raiders and trolls, who blindly rushed to receive bans from their target, for little more benefit than to discharge a superficial public opinion. Any successful entry into an oppositional group can never be used to funnel your own activity. The only sustainable position maintained there is compiling information, something to be hidden from even both groups' members. A truly beneficial ally would, like the leader, know not to confuse presence with personal growth. And I knew words were not the weapon, but the currency of research. Even in my earliest years of research, I can reflect on the disparity between those who lead for presence and those who lead for impact. Just as status overshadows actions in the physical world, this pattern demonstrated a consistency in the digital world. Uneducated greatness was still greatness in appearance. How different would it be if you left the comforts of assumption and went on to question the achievements of yourself, the leaders, or the popular? Confidence is the fool's substitute for intelligence. Growing in struggling. You only had to take up the ambition of learning to quickly find out what con members thought of significant figures in the Roblox community. There was nothing but disinterest and mockery for the purpose of Roblox, with con leaders, condo group leaders, claiming their games have no association with Roblox despite relying on the platform for their industry. In the midst of selfishness, the con leaders made no secret of the fact that any alliance would be solely for the purposes of promoting their condo games. The impulse that would seize both groups' con members demonstrates how the alliance would benefit both condo groups. Simply by introducing each condo group, the con members will profit both even when the alliance inevitably breaks down due to competition. Anyone believing in the possibility of condo players fighting for any leadership would be incomprehensible upon witnessing the condo community long enough. When a condo group allies with a standard Roblox group, things will be different. The con members, out of compulsion and stupidity, will continuously write explicit messages on both groups, ignoring all efforts from the Roblox group to moderate this. The alliance will chain both groups to a state that will expose all members to degeneracy and fall further from the original role of the Roblox group. What value would an alliance have once a Roblox group's original purpose is erased from its recent history? Wasn't the purpose of forging such a partnership to preserve or spread the significance of both groups' goals? Or did the leaders believe they could automatically benefit from an alliance regardless of the groups involved? If leaders had only studied history and psychology more clearly, they would have recognized the absence of benefit applied in any front. Even if the universal values are aligned, the stark differences in each leadership and methodology was too great to overcome. Why, then, would an alliance be established? Only in an attempt to guard the activity of the Roblox group without using the owner's own resources. And the outcome leads to nothing other than further propagation of con members' corrupt behaviors. What form should a Roblox group assume in the tangible future? And how can this development and its framework receive the necessary security? A clear examination of the premises for group activity lead to the following discovery. Con infestations are only able to grow if other con members start the chain of explicit messages. Con infestations refer to con members gaining significant control over a non-con group or game, such as MB or Meep City, and use it for disgusting purposes of their own. Con infestations are a major problem in Roblox as it is very difficult to stop a con infestation without the owner's help. Similarly, in any other group's activity, the difficulty of controlling this growing concentration of con members increases with time, unless methods of eliminating the presence of this infestation were identified. There are several methods for group leaders to prevent such a terrible development. The process of membership could be manually limited, thus lowering the entry rate of new con members. A group will not be weakened if member counts diminish, as long as the members that represent group values remain dedicated. The con infestation will serve as a trial to differentiate those less suited for the group's objectives. Those that stay active without joining the condo community understand fully their beliefs and values, but are not necessarily representative of intellectual strength or leadership. By challenging the con members' actions in the targeted group, individuals demonstrate the willpower to take action, and thus demonstrates potential for the anti-condo community. At the same time, the likely ineffectiveness of their efforts humbles the individual and prompts them to consider more effective methods to indirectly improve the anti-condo community. Unfortunately, such a proactive behavior is becoming rarer. Intellectual strength stems from not just enduring opposition, but also striking back. In contrast, the concept of redemption makes the public believe that all humans can be good if they try. This adjustment to personality has been tried many times, with one major flaw. What differentiates humans from animals? We don't just act on impulse or comfort. We act on what is most beneficial. And what defines being a human is becoming forgotten. Some con members may feign humanity, temporarily isolating themselves from the vices and activities within the condo community. Many reject the pathway to redemption, discarding any consideration of change. What this all indicates is that anyone who becomes a full con member becomes incapable of change, incapable of permanently embracing the strengths of human nature, incapable of improving upon any flaws they possess, incapable of demonstrating human nature as a whole. And as the stronger people, we must discard any opportunity for con members to weaken human society any further. To secure the existence of the irredeemable is to rob society of the opportunity to grow. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Preserving in repurposing. A second method to prevent a con infestation would be one that has worked in many cases, both digitally and physically, and is highly recommended: homogenizing group beliefs. This has been misunderstood more times than it has been mentioned, so its importance cannot be stressed enough, especially when it prevents the most conceivable damage to any sort of group. Without doubt, this method will optimize productivity, but only up to a certain limit, and not endlessly. All groups will inevitably become inactive someday, and understanding this method acknowledges that initially it will be easy to align the beliefs of all group members with the objectives of a group. Typically with the Roblox community, their demands will rise more rapidly than a group can naturally accommodate for, so a consistent set of beliefs is necessary to not only satisfy the group, but also to ensure its values persist even after it becomes inactive. Simultaneously, the greatest limitation and foundation of group activity is the purpose. There is also the issue of how well the purpose remains standing when challenged multiple times, from multiple angles. An unsustainable purpose, such as fame or popularity, will quickly reach its unimpressive prime, lacking any further consistencies or relevance to guide it. For the anti-condo community, however, the purpose is to eliminate explicit influences in Roblox socialization processes, specifically the hypersexualization of our present and future generations. The significance of this purpose will only increase with the growth of society. Unfortunately, con members exploit the widespread application of true autonomy to justify indifference or vice, damage the public's understanding of the anti-condo community. It damages the public's understanding of what differentiates humans from animals. It damages the durability of contemporary societal values. It may be argued that this individual corruption and anarchic future is unrealistic. At first glance, it seems perfectly correct, with global crime rates seeing an overall decline. However, in the digital age, the areas facing a growth in crime rate include cybercrime, serious organized crime, online child exploitation or abuse, and human trafficking. These are half of the categories with notable growth, all of which are directly applicable to the condo community. By breaking the Roblox community standards, which are legally binding, con members partake in cybercrime, with the condo groups demonstrating organized crime which involves monetary profit. The condo community encourages involvement from the Roblox community, despite 56% of Roblox users being under 16 years of age. indirectly promoting online child exploitation or abuse. Finally, there have been news reports of aforementioned community using other platforms as a setting for child trafficking, with the latest report being as recent as April 2025. Already the consequences of the condo community affect individuals' behaviors, while those who suffer from it are treated like a TV show, by the societal force necessary to prevent repeating issues. Again, it is demonstrated that intellectual strength does not derive from inherent possession by any particular individual. On the contrary, strength belongs to anyone with the willpower to take and cultivate it. Intellectual strength recognizes perfection's impossibility, yet maintains the ambition to pursue it. However, when their environment begins depriving them of any methods or knowledge on how to improve further, that is when the value of humanity is forgotten. That is when the following generation becomes ravaged by corruption and vice. This illustrates that anti-condo community has, and should always, represent a relevant benefit to human society. We must work towards homogenizing the entire community, starting from the individual group. Anyone who challenges the necessity must be logically addressed to further individual convictions to grow, and if the hindrance stubbornly refuses to accept their own weakness, remove them. All conditions cannot fester doubt or miscommunication within the anti-condo community, for they only serve to hinder its success further. The intellectually powerful proved their strength, their prevalence against impulse, their worthiness of being human, and cannot be exposed to natural weakness without receiving the logic to counter it. Therefore, regardless of how much time passes, the skill set, mindset, and willpower provided by the anti-condo community will remain beneficial to its members even after the downfall of the condo community. The anti-condo community, after truly homogenizing, will demonstrate a significantly more meaningful benefit to societal values by reinforcing a culture of intellectual strength and order. The severest struggles of lust, complacency, and greed cannot be tolerated in the anti-condo community, just as they cannot be tolerated in society. Overall, reinforcing a group's purpose would be as sustainable and impactful as the purpose itself. The anti-condo community demonstrates this perfectly, its purpose being one of the closest to universal. It grows the intellectually strong through struggle, and reminds us that humans don't just act on impulse or comfort. Humans act on what is most beneficial. It is no accident that the primary propagators of societal complacency sympathize with con members. They know their threat to society all too well, and constantly work to plant dangerous doubts into the thoughts of the public, to make the struggle for significance seem little more than automatic gifts from talent and luck. It cannot be emphasized sharply enough that any activity from the anti-condo community must serve to eliminate the societal weaknesses that are embedded into widespread perception. We must retain consistency and relevance by renewing the general values that make our struggles more cohesive against the corruptive influence of con members. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Limitation to a specific platform is an exceedingly unfavorable condition for anti-condo group homogenizing. The functions of roadblocks prevent both explicit material and the anti-condo community's works, including posters, videos, or documents. Meanwhile, exclusively operating outside of roadblocks prevents the anti-condo group from growing its knowledge of con members' activities, as the majority occur on roadblocks. Hence the very functions of multiple platforms offer both the anti-condo and condo communities a basis for preserving group activity, and for the former, reinforcing dedication to eliminating condos. This does not mean occupying more platforms is automatically beneficial. In various cases, avoiding excessive use is ideal. Platforms not commonly connected to roadblocks, such as Facebook, will reflect a similar indifference already troubling the Roblox community, and will distance themselves from any anti-condo group growth because they never knew, nor are willing to know, the extent a children's game corrupts the later generations. Similarly, condo communities will rarely appear on these platforms, preventing any knowledge on them from being developed further there. Choosing a social media platform requires adequate knowledge about its context in order to progress towards the heart of the condo problem. Thus, there remained two criteria points for a social media platform to be useful for the anti-condo community. 1. The ability to centralize many individuals witnessing and willing to hinder the condo community. 2. Producing insight into the condo community to be accounted by the anti-condo community. Overall, benefits of recruitment or benefits of research. Both ways were contemplated, examined, and utilized by the ODH. The most commonly used within the anti-condo community would be the recruitment approach. The acquisition of new members establish a higher potential for a group to become impactful, while simultaneously widening awareness of the condo community to more individuals. Many limitations of the anti-condo community derive from possessing few active members, demonstrating role of the sense of disbelief in weakening groups. A new member could be temporarily immune as they are focused on a group's potential benefits before joining. Furthermore, this approach allows the anti-condo group to preserve its capabilities for a long enough time to reinforce its values in the members. If used correctly, the group ceases to become a temporary collective and forges itself into a weapon against the condo community. Since this group would now have the adequate foundation, they become more independent of alliances and can individually contribute to the anti-condo community through difficult times. Despite being the popular approach, recruitment without research cannot fulfill a prompt and lasting benefit. Anti-condo groups must objectively recognize the standpoint that if awareness alone solved their problems, how has nothing changed despite occurring often on the news? How has the condo community still thrived despite knowingly promoting the sexual content similarly found in predatory behavior? In this case, we must not let over-reliance on the public obscure us from the boundaries of justice. True, people will not willingly accept their flaws or take action against its roots. Even when the significance of societal preservation is logically explained, little action will be taken. When the cyber safety specialists had rested their decisions on hiding the problem, through solely suggesting online feature restrictions, our successors will only possess a fraction of our present knowledge, and in that case the public will transition from complacency to ignorance. It is our determination to fight for knowledge or strength that must be applied onto the thinkers of the future. Unfortunately for the present, many anti-condo groups overlook the importance of knowledge. They would prefer to arm their members with clubs rather than develop the blueprints for a gun. Public knowledge of the operations of condo groups outweighed by the failed actions of the anti-condo community. And from this derives the preservation of condo game manufacturers and tested inefficiency of popular methods. The condo community's exploitation of innate desires cannot be compared to any other community. For the anti-condo community, the only foundation of studying the problem lay in studying human nature. Initially, humans will never become con members, rightfully knowing the detriments and weaknesses associated with them. But in adolescence, the relevance of social and environmental determinants shifts the individual's values, with some losing sight of what differentiates humans from animals, losing the ability to act on benefits rather than impulse or comfort. It is true that retaining intellectual strength demands consistent devotion. It is impossible to approach improvement half-heartedly, as the concept of improvement addresses everything you know and possess about the subject. This means that those who never devote themselves to methods of improvement are never guided by anything other than instinct. Clearly, the Kondo community has profited off this hesitation, regardless of whether they succumb to greed or lust. Defining the value of anything could only be accurately accomplished from the standpoint of intellectual strength and willingness to improve. If a Kondo group desired adjustments, they will always be at the cost of roadblocks, and this meant that the Kondo community improves their games and groups not by expanding their capabilities, but by limiting the capacity for others to grow. Therefore, only one clear orientation could facilitate the pathway to the public's intellectual improvement. Rejecting emotion as justification. Rejecting methods that obscure a problem, regardless of whom it may impact. Rejecting the misconception of power being defined by status. The result will certainly require extensive progression, but will certainly surpass the limitations of the modern human. All this can be primarily attributed to acknowledging the necessity of information. Not for the first time, it was evident that the anti-Kondo community neglected to observe the terrifying patterns of humans becoming Kon members. People were unpleasantly affected by the thought of having to investigate such a toxic environment when nothing valuable was ever obtained easily. If the necessity of researching the Kondo community had been prevalent in the anti-Kondo community from the beginning, progress becomes more rapid. Anti-Kondo users would have been well equipped against both the Kon members and their personal flaws. The sense of futility and disbelief would have little room to grow among logic and evidence. The influence of individual members in that outcome would be far more persuasive. Sadly, our predecessors never knew the lessons we currently see. They started a pattern of premature action and needless awareness that our peers repeat today. If the anti-Kondo community lacked the awareness and determination to break this flawed pattern, then we have no right to expect the public to lend their hand to any significant action, regardless of whether it benefits them. The attitudes of the anti-Kondo community on improving their knowledge illustrates the outcome of its capability to becoming a movement. In any case, no one would be justified in solely looking on, as year after year the Kon member re-emerges in the news. The public feared nothing more than involving itself in conflict, yet they will be forced into it at a time they would be unprepared. Those who are unequipped to improve will receive only detriment when progress is needed. By researching the workings and psychologies of the Kondo community, we will develop the tools to preserve not only our own intellectual strength, but the intellectual strength of the public. And everyone will live by the understanding that overcoming our innate obstacles is what applies value into being human. While awareness is useless without action, action is useless without knowledge. Addiction in manipulating. It was mentioned several times before that Kon leaders make monetary profit off of their games, though I have yet to explain how. Since it relies on others' impulses, such a pathway would have been easier as a developer, with relevance and promotion require limited effort. For other games, the growth of profit can range from a sudden influx to a gradual growth, but its most successful cases are always more profitable than creating Kondo games, as they are not limited to the intellectually weak. The developer exchange program is the most common method of profiting from Roblox games. After players earn at least 30,000 Robux from their game, are at least 13 years old with a verified email, and have no prior moderation actions on their account, they can directly convert the Robux into genuine money. The average Roblox game creator earns $1, $575 in 2024. While the moderation requirements seemingly prevent con leaders from earning money from the condo games, the requirements only apply based on account status. The majority of condo games are preserved using new accounts managed by bots, disconnecting any past moderation history. This allows con leaders to potentially qualify for the developer exchange program. A condo game can compile profit more quickly than standard games, but is often removed before any significant profit is obtained. Con leaders who continue recognize that significant profit would require further illegal activity. They had long discarded any friendly or moral conduct and any peaceful intentions towards Roblox. As such, many greedily established a key website that would require members to pay genuine money in order to play condos. By setting up their own website, con leaders are able to bypass the developer exchange program entirely, occasionally setting entry prices for their members. And in their intellectual weakness, con members will pay for these games or special permissions within them. Viewed from all angles, payment for condo games is madness, even for some con leaders. But very few considered the inability of con members to act outside of impulse or immediate comfort. Some try, however adequate exposure to the condo industry will break any willpower, or even physical capability, to grow intellectual strength. The discussion on redeeming con members is little more than nonsensical theory if all that is given is the how. The unproductivity stemming from academic neglect is striking proof that the anti-condo community benefits widely from research. The condo industry is little more than the Roblox porn industry, albeit much more dangerous given that many con leaders don't just propagate weakness, they glorify it. Regardless, the reason condo games are chosen over standard explicit content is attributed to a combination of two factors. Firstly, it is the sexual relaxation and feelings of satisfaction. Secondly, condo games give con members the illusion of social significance, either forging shallow relationships or relationships that lead to trading explicit pictures, or worse. The National Library of Medicine also discovered that
manifestations of the sexual addiction related to excessive sexual behavior due to craving causes inability of self-control, and also subjective experiences of internal conflict, very similar to symptoms that usually manifest in obsessive-compulsive disorders.
Furthermore, the amount of pornographic exposure experienced by con members hinders their capabilities to desensitize themselves, deterring them from actively seeking out changes which intellectually strengthen humans. Is it not the distinguishing feature of new experiences that they grow neural pathways? And would I be mistaken in recognizing the excessive dopamine and testosterone levels as negative and permanent side effects of becoming a con member? The fact that some con leaders avoid playing their own games proved the unhealthy nature of the condo industry, especially on con members. They can manipulate with the pathos demanded. They can create whatever fetish their audiences needed. They can talk to some members when sufficient. In every interaction exploited the con member's stimulatory reliance, knowing full well the brain at a certain stage cannot repair itself to the normal sensitivity and functions. However, anti-condo community members and media can cultivate a variety of conceptions, mostly revolving around the group's growth or activity rather than its purpose. This inevitably leads to inactivity or ineffective actions, hastily planned. The consequence was an inaccurate foundation which would take individuals months to repair and years to fully implement. The fact that an industry as manipulative as the Roblox condos could not be taken down using orthodox efforts was unfortunately something that never occurred to most, if not all, anti-condo group leaders. The few who raised a voice of warning were ignored or unable to establish a reliable foundation. When writing Condology Study, I remember my difficulty in locating resources that directly address condo games, groups, or their community. After a few days, the realization dawned that con members can be fully understood using psychological knowledge, and my fascination with psychology had certainly seemed fit to raise the information that was long overdue. It was then that I began my first reflections about the importance of social determinants, specifically the importance of values. While the values of con members and leaders were distorted from those of society, they demonstrated significance of societal factors in allowing the condo community to continue corrupting more individuals. And if con leaders succeeded through manipulating values according to desires, we were bound to succeed by reforming desires according to values. My pursuit for accurate and reliable information proved a special advantage. Intellectual strength will enable the anti-condo community to win the affection of individuals and the confidence of groups more consistently. It certainly occurred to me that this information would become a profound horror to the public, as the corruption of con members have never been regarded seriously as a psychological permanence. My pursuit of knowledge will be regarded with an expression of disinterest or mockery, until, to their disbelief and amazement, the history of the anti-condo community supported my insight into the ineffective patterns. The same patterns that the public shared with the same moderators they were compelled to scapegoat. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. Warning in deafening. The common disregard of con members to their Discord servers' announcements further illustrates their intellectual weakness in not just willpower, but also comprehension. Their response towards moderation actions even in condo servers therefore reflected the obliviousness of condo groups even to their leadership. A con leader can announce deleting a partner message in the general channel, but this will not stop several from posting these messages there. Even with the introduction of a partner channel, rules there would often be broken if they requested unnecessary effort. Even with the standpoint of any condo server rules, the influence of con members would be certainly ruinous to intellectual strength. By tolerating the growth of explicit behaviors, con members are unable to promote adherence to any group culture attempted. It meant promoting the same excess autonomy that is used to justify becoming a con member, which reinforces defying any authority. Even as the member count grows, the only people who cared about a specific condo group will be its administrators, as its supporters never sought influence or decisive positions due to indifference or prior experiences. Perceptions of regular con members towards a specific condo group would be at the same stage as those of a new member to any other Roblox group. Even condo groups disregard each other, unless their condo games are made by the same functions and split the profit and audience between each group. Con leaders often engage in open struggle as they are competitors for the same target audience, even if the con members are indifferent towards the conflict's outcome. It does not favor them that condo games have a higher ban rate, preventing con members from playing both before one gets removed. Once again, con leaders operate on a system of greed and selfishness, as more existing condo game creators divide each one's profits. They are almost as detrimental to each other than the anti-condo community is. Fortunately, this was recognized in various instances, with some anti-condo users creating entry fees in false condo games. By paying for a false condo game, con members increase their spending on condos or are unable to pay for the genuine game. In a rare instance, a condo group recognized this and warned their members not to join any games that required payment. There are two outcomes from this, neither of which favored the con leaders. First, the members evaded all games requiring payment, lowering the general profit of condo game creators. Secondly, the more likely scenario is that con members will ignore this announcement and continue paying. Con leaders will still gain profit, but at a further cost to the con members. It would be misfortune for most con leaders if con members genuinely listened, for the best outcome for them would have been that nothing changes. Never would the con leaders be willing to collectively prioritize members' safety over profit, evident in the fact they do not play their own games. The greed used to stereotype Roblox administration is more suitably applicable to con leaders. They have built up and immersed themselves in a culture that neglects personal growth or awareness for their own profit. The con leaders would rather shatter the Roblox community for money than avoid contributing to the extreme psychological decline and predatory behavior proliferated by the condo industry. Great were the dangers and detriments demonstrated by con members' ability to comprehend communication unrelated to sexual activity, as witnessed by any who tried to communicate with them. The only reliable group components they can make are their enemies, from other condo groups to the anti-condo community. Psychologically, the con members' comprehensive limitations derived from establishing the incorrect image of communication. Exposure to the content of condo games has proven to negatively impact the connection between two parts of the brain, one processing visual information, movement, and long-term memory, the other in sustaining attention and short-term memory. Furthermore, con members' perceptions of efficient communication are just as damaged as their neurological connectors. They associated productive conversation with sexual tension, disregarding that
communication is characterized as feelings of connectedness, bonding, and being listened to create an atmosphere of self-forgiveness and acceptance, and are inversely related to hypersexual behavior.
This effect unveils another societal threat, as propagating weakness and innate desires can easily proliferate through various social circles, both digitally or in person. After all, the condo industry's values prioritize immediate benefit at the expense of neurological and ideological degeneration. The appeal of excessive autonomy, to the point of anarchy, represented too tempting of a weakness for several to reject or further consider. This made it possible to exploit indifference against condos, common among the public, and indoctrinate their descendants into a single-sided perception, which exploits desires and deters the benefits of intellectual strength. The danger was enormously increased by the role of other social media platforms, such as Discord, Instagram, Snapchat, and Telegram, in providing con members with a wider range of audiences. The con members utilize these platforms to carry out a wider range of corrupting the weak-willed, luring them into losing self-control and over-reliance on impulse and comfort. This was a tactic used by a variety of businesses, with similar content already being advertised to consistent users of social media. It is effective at reducing marketing costs and enhancing interactivity, amplifying the awareness and appeal of products. Many industries contribute to social media marketing, and condo games are no exception, making content on game bypass codes, advertising their games or social media message sectors, and privately messaging others to bring them into the condo industry. This is the discovery I made regarding the reasons several con members mention other social media platforms on their Roblox account. Even then, I made no subtlety in my conviction for the elimination for con members and their catastrophic effects beyond Roblox. This conviction remained firm, and did not falter when the ODH began to decline in enthusiasm, awakening me to the consequences of futility and disbelief. I should have anticipated the rising doubt regarding the condo problem's relevance and the anti-condo community's theoretical importance. Several news articles served as warnings, but like most sensible information, this was initially discarded with apathy. I could only watch in silence as ODH members revealed their true beliefs, abandoning the conflict and the anti-condo community's values. The illusion that communication occurred is its largest obstacle. Overlooking in criticizing. The possibility of illustrating the neurological and philosophical inferiority of the con members lay in highly similar, though not identical, behavioral patterns. With the rise in psychological research, the growing significance of social media to industries, the realization was increasingly clear that the condo community is only operating on the basis of societal weakness. Many attempted to argue that Roblox moderation was responsible for the preservation of condos, that the sole reason for this are inadequate platform restrictions. Roblox has little direct contribution to the condo problem when discussing determinants rather than solutions. It is not moderator support that preserves the condo groups, but the malignance of those prompted by greed to weaken the human race, and by extension societal values. This and nothing else is the aim and purpose of the condo community. The Developer Exchange Program is one of the many instruments required for this achievement. It has become the cause of Roblox's own detrimental reputation because it is based on an unnatural foundation of exploiting autonomy for profit. Only in this way can it be explained that Roblox as a platform does not actively promote the distribution of condo games. The ways that con leaders exploit not only their members' vices, but also their platform, will be necessary to maintain intellectual strength using the optimal resources. The intellectually weak who actively regress humans into biological incapability can make livings without any innovation of their own. This knowledge is highly relevant to recognizing a people under whose ailment humanity is suffering more and more against the con members. The condo industry was never socially limited in itself, though restricted in the sense of excessively embracing a sole value. Consequently, this community has always formed a basis within several platforms. This trick has been used ingeniously throughout human history to hide behind the status of multiple notable groups, assuring people of the tolerance which the public are willing to use as an excuse against personal involvement. For in reality, tolerance is nothing more than a tool to minimize change, regardless of whether this change brings negative or positive outcomes. Condo groups therefore embrace sociological, philosophical, and biological fields that favor their preservation. The contemporary approach to preserve needlessly is to vandalize the warning signs beyond legibility, thus allowing problems to grow beyond isolation. An outcome as relevant as it is threatening, particularly to generations developing the philosophies or opinions central to founding their societal values. That is why the condo community, in all realistic outcomes, will catalyze the decline of societal structure. The virtues and growth of human capability will become gradually unappealing in comparison to anarchic freedom and selfish sabotaging, diluting the very strengths that make humanity valuable.
If you propagate weakness, you have demonstrated weakness.
Thus, The ideal way to approach studying the Kondo community is to draw upon as many determinants as possible and demonstrate willingness to align what you reliably learn with what you unwaveringly believe. This is what determines the inflexible LARPers, embodying hypocrisy and cruelty, from the dedicated contributors, who recognize the basis for both the Kondo and anti-Kondo perspectives. Where determination and courage fail can be attributed to overlooking every factor, further reinforcing the importance of growing resourcefulness. An individual's innate desires will not be unchecked if their undisciplined nature is acknowledged and controlled. As soon as these desires become familiar to any human, no matter how responsible, the brain will become adapted to the excess dopamine, constantly interfering with intellectual growth. If, however, we consider the question of what is necessary to preserve intellectual strength, they are summarized as the ability and willpower of individuals to sacrifice irrelevant interests for growth. The complacency of the public and news organizations against con members are explained upon recognizing that these three rarely, if not never, made contemporary sacrifices for sustained benefit. Nothing illustrates a human superior willpower better than their actions. While history's significant fought for improvement, today's public preached about freedom, not even for society, but for themselves. It irritated me how this demonstrates contemporary values became empty and irresponsible, in a similar vein to the Kondo community. We no longer knew the full extent that free will and decision chokes out societal order. Throughout human history, ideals motivate hundreds to give their lives to strengthen their nation. As soon as they fought for the basics of food, they were more than willing to surrender. Core examples of this are visible in Germany, Russia, Turkey, and Austria-Hungary during World War I, where food shortages became the prime, albeit lesser, motivator for continuing. Though significant, this change in attitude does not astonish me at all. It was clear that the average evades significant problems unless there is a reward for solving them. Never has any major movement been founded from peacetime, but from exposure to collective threats, regardless of whether the conflict is born from virtue, craftiness, or preservation. Therefore, addressing various determinants, various logical fields, are necessary to drive action against the con members' parasitism. When we allow instincts to be depicted as something worthy of praise, the willpower to improve is forced to grow in a field of futility and corruption. The belief that all blame for the impacts of con members could be attributed solely to the individual or the Roblox company illustrates that self-discipline, willpower, and intellectual growth are gradually becoming obscured to the public. For those who do not look into multiple fields of knowledge, this pattern represents a riddle. Since Roblox demonstrated opposition against the Kondo community, how had members of the Roblox community succumbed to such a sickening instinct? This is not an isolated occurrence, but incident after incident rising among the insecure or indifferent. Countless times I have reviewed this question, immersing myself in theoretical worlds, gathering clarity concerning its origins and outcomes, and now turn to master public understanding of this corruption. Pessimists complain to the wind. Optimists expect it to change. Realists adjust their sails. Lamenting in encouraging. In my intentions, struggles, and successes of my studying, I reinforce the foundation of my own convictions, rather than shifting my own inner view like the outcomes of most learning. Likewise, the relation of apathy to con members was granted further examination. In the field of solitude and close acquaintances, I was filled with resentment against those promoting or demonstrating complacency against the condo community. Resentment against the way that one of the most devastating socialization problems for international societies was treated carelessly. It had always been beyond me how people turn the blind eye to a danger whose effects, as intended by con leaders, were bound to be disastrous. Even among promising times, I remain cautious against the phrases that the bystanders use to comfort themselves. It does not affect us, or we cannot change it. This complacent attitude had been the downfall of countless organizations and groups. Could anyone believe that the Roblox community was not subject to the same flaws as society? In the final weeks of writing Condology Study, I, for the first time in various circles which today support the anti-condo community, expressed the conviction that the question of our descendants' futures derive from the elimination of the condo community. In the catastrophic failures of anti-condo efforts, I saw only the consequences of disruption and misinformation, which almost destroyed all the foundations of a healthy society and community. Often, those affected failed to recognize the extent that their activities and desires misaligned with their philosophies. The internal decline of the anti-condo community has been the pattern of con member influence over and over, yet both have failed to achieve clarity concerning the forces threatening their existence. Those who attempted to achieve such by modifying the irrelevant confuses the outcome with the factors that cause it. Since many did not know the psychological and philosophical components of con members, my knowledge and experiences can bring the anti-condo community out of pointless scattering or shouting. Those caring too much stand out from those who never cared.